This is Backroads of Illinois server to farmers and ranchers in central Illinois and the Midwest. We're glad you're here for the Markets Club podcast. We were talking about the fundamentals with a Bruce Blythe from Farm Futures. This has been the Markets Club podcast. We are talking about the beans demand without China, or with them for this week in South Korea with the presidency of China and South Korea. We were talking about it with Bruce Blythe from Farm Futures. Hey Bruce, how are you? And it was good to see you, indicator for the farm progress.
I'm well, and good to see you at the Farm Progress Show also. Uh, Quite a bit has happened over the past 2 months, that's for sure. So,
Of course. Bruce. Let's discuss about this trade for this weekend's show. South Korea. What is your thought with the beans market?
yes, it's been an eventful week for the grain markets and the markets in general. President Trump is scheduled to meet with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping tomorrow in South Korea. Uh, However, a lot of the news seems to have come out before that meeting over the past few days. Over the weekend, the Treasury Secretary signaled he expected the U.S., or he felt that the U.S. and the Chinese were making progress toward a trade deal and that Chinese soybean purchases would be part of that. China, of course, has been avoiding U.S. soybeans for the last several months and stockpiling supplies from Brazil and also from Argentina, and that's been weighing on soybean prices. However, the news or the reports coming out this week uh, triggered a very steep rally in the soybean market. You had the January futures contract soar a little bit over eight to 11, a little bit over $11 per bushel, a level that hasn't been since well over a year, like summer of 2024. So it was a like 80 plus cent rally in some of the nearby futures contracts on these renewed hopes that a trade deal could be imminent that will include soybean purchases and will involve China returning to the U.S. soybean market. China, of course, has been the U.S. top overseas buyer of soybeans, and having them absent has been a growing concern among farmers in the grain industry, just because they're the world's biggest soybean importer. Um, Last year, they bought something in the neighborhood of 840 million bushels of U.S. soybeans. So far in this marketing year, it's been zero. So there's a renewed hope that we're going to get some Chinese demand back. In fact, they're reported to have bought a few cargoes of U.S. soybeans yesterday or earlier this week, and may be in line to purchase another 10 million metric tons or so, which is about 36 million bushels. So that seems like progress. That's got that gave the markets a jolt, and we're going to see what happens tomorrow, Thursday, in South Korea. What the two leaders have to say, what they come up with, and whether we get a trade agreement that benefits hopefully American farmers.
Do you think about the impact on the meeting for tomorrow morning in South Korea?
Yes, that's going to be closely watched. The the market seems to the soybean market seems to kind of upstaged whatever we get tomorrow with the rally this week. It's it raises the question of buy the rumor, sell the fact kind of situation where we get the rally ahead of the news. At any rate, the soybean market has turned much more optimistic and more bullish over the near term anyway. And now we wait for the for Trump and Xi to meet and see what they say. Uh, the devil is in the details, as they always say, and these negotiations involve much more than just soybeans. They involve rare earth minerals, which China basically controls the production of. Both sides have steep tariffs on respective products from each other's countries. So they're going to be covering a lot of ground. Agriculture is just one of several key issues that need to be hammered out. And, we'll see. But it seems what we've seen and heard this week seems promising or encouraging that maybe we're going to get a resolution to this prolonged trade dispute that's been, it's lasted most of this year, and it hasn't been good for American farmers to, have China avoiding avoiding your products. So we'll see what they say tomorrow.
How is the November beans for this morning, Bruce, with the technicals buying?
Well, November futures are about $10.80 a bushel, and that's near a 1-year high. The market took off. There's a term in the futures markets. It's called a hockey stick move, and if you look at the daily soybean chart, it kind of looks like a hockey stick because prices were kind of trading along in a flat or sideways pattern, and this week just shot almost straight up, kind of like the blade of a hockey stick. So that's obviously that's a bullish move. It suggests you know more buyers moving into the market, and whether it holds or whether it continues, again, a lot depends on what if any trade deal we get with China. Um, there's the prospect that this could be, we factored all the bullish in news for now. China has covered most of its needs for the near term in soybeans. They need to cover about a month or so worth of soybean needs, I believe, until South American supplies become available. Like, Brazil and Argentina are planting their soybean and corn crops right now. Their harvest starts usually shortly after the holidays in January. Uh, China has been sourcing most of its soybeans from Brazil for years now, and there's only a small window of need for them. So that's so the caveat here for farmers is that yeah, we might get some fresh China business, but it's not going to be a landslide. It could be several million bushels, which is not nothing, but is it enough to sustain further upside in soybean prices? That's unclear. Uh, China may make longer term pledges to buy soybeans and other ag products as they did during the first Trump administration with this phase one agreement. Longer term, that could be bullish. But right now, the $11 level we hit this week looked pretty good to a lot of farmers. I think there was a lot of farmers selling this week, and also in corn. Corn kind of followed the coattails of soybeans and rallied to roughly 6-week highs, 4-month highs rather. And you saw farmers selling there too. We're getting towards the tail end of harvest. I think we're going to be wrapping up beans here within a week or so. for most of the Midwest and corn soon after. So from there, it's we watch the markets and we watch South American weather and of course the ongoing trade developments.
Of course, see and wait and see for this week in South Korea for trade for tomorrow. Bull market is up for this week in the week since Monday morning at the opening of the session.
I'm really waiting to see what happens tomorrow, or to see how the market reacts tomorrow, and I think everybody should closely watch it as well, just to see how it responds to whatever comes out of South Korea and any detail, any trade deal that's struck, and the details. I mean, uh, again, we could be looking at a buy rumor sell fact situation that could send the market either lower or just sort of in a sideways pattern. So again, I think what happens with the U.S.-China negotiations will be key to the near-term price outlook for soybeans, and bears watching very closely. So,
Of course. What is your final thoughts about the corn demand for the future?
well, corn demand remains very strong. We are running at a record export pace. We are the USDA, at least the last numbers we got, which are a little stale by this point, but the USDA sees corn exports near 3 billion bushels for the full year, which would be a record. It sees record ethanol demand. Ethanol demand is running very strong. So the demand profile for corn and beans as well remains pretty solid, pretty strong, with the exception of the exports for soybeans. Exports are already expected to be down quite a bit in soybeans I have them down like a 6-year low, according to the latest USDA figures. And those numbers came out before, 2 months, almost 2 months ago, when we didn't know the extent of China's, how long China would be out of the market. So it's possible that the soybean export for the full year, the estimate will be revised lower, maybe 1.5 billion bushels, 1.4. But that's one of the caveats to the soybean market outlook. Corn, again, uh, very strong demand profile in most categories. However, you're looking at a 16 billion bushel corn crop, maybe not as big as what USDA projected in September, but it's still going to be most likely record large. And we're looking at a ending stocks figure north of 2 billion bushels at the end of next summer. That would be about a 7-year high. That's a pretty sizable supply overhang for the corn market that could, burden prices for some time to come. We just have, demand's good, supplies are greater. It's just sort of the reality of situation when you produce massive crops like this. You need commensurate increase in demand to absorb it, and we just don't have that at the moment. So I would watch for the export pace, which looks to remain strong, especially with a lot of corn going to Mexico due to the shutdown of the border to cattle imports. Mexico has been buying They're buying a lot of corn from us for months to feed the cattle they have there, that they aren't allowed to import to the U.S. because New World screwworm restrictions. So that's a positive underpinning for the corn market. And if that If that situation is ever resolved, that could have a market impact as well. If Mexico is allowed to resume cattle imports into the U.S., they may not need to buy as much of our corn. But that's more of a longer term question.
Thanks, Bruce. I am glad to have you on today.
Well, I'm glad to be here, Cesar. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the time.
Bruce Blythe from Farm Futures on the Markets Club podcast.